The Kassalar system. Located toward the eastern fringes of the galaxy beyond Ultramar, the Kassalar system is an incredibly rich source of promethium and other minerals used in the production of much of the Imperium's armed forces, and is a crucial buffer system in the defense of Ultramar itself. Long considered nigh impregnable, the Kassalar system bristles with industry, a vast series of forge worlds dedicated to the production of the holy armaments of the Imperial war machine. Agri-worlds work tirelessly to feed the vast forces of Kassalar and neighboring systems beyond. Hive worlds of seething billions provide the sheer manpower required to fill the ranks of the Imperial regiments and the Administratum's countless scribes and bureaucrats, tasked with keeping track of this enormous system's workings. However, the wars of the Imperium are a heavy burden, due to the ever-increasing demands of the many war fronts. Kassalar found its tithes increased again and again until the system began to suffer the fading death of exhaustion. The demands were heavy, and many miners were worked to death, and their machine spirits degraded into rage as there was no time left to deliver the soothing canticles of the Omnisire from Mechanicus adepts and acolytes. Unrest soon erupted into open dissent, only to be crushed by the heavy hands of the planetary governors. The demands of the tithes must be met. The war machine could not afford to falter, even for a moment. Then came the warp storms. As if sensing the discord, they spilled forth and around the system in an unending tide, cutting it off from all but the most determined and desperate vessels. The Ordo Malleus reported that the timing and location of these storms was more than mere coincidence. It had been created. Isolated, the system could survive, though its supply lines were strained and the threats of madness, desperation, and mutation swelled through the countless billions of frightened citizens. But far worse than these threats were that spilled from the storms into the material. Heretical Astartes and traitorous Imperial regiments, pirates, despoils and demagogues, raiding, slaughtering, burning their way into the system like a dagger seeking its heart, all intent on furthering their long war against the Holy Emperor, their dark acts all a profane hymn to their masters, the Chaos Gods. Now, with the Kassalar system already reeling from the onslaught of these raids, other Xenos factions saw their opportunity. The Tau saw their chance to lay claim to the mineral-rich worlds for the glory of their so-called greater good, and promising help against these would-be raiders. The ever-pragmatic confederations of the Votann had also seen the current war climates of Kassalar as too profitable to pass up. For their risk and reward calculus of spoils demands the kin to seek any and all new ventures to expand the resources of the leagues in the name of their ancestors. From the many hidden webways that lay scattered across the galaxy, the Eldari also emerged, no doubt as a result of some esoteric vision brought to their leaders of an impending doom from some unknowable source. Yet despite the presence of these pirates and saviors, swarming like flies on a still-moving corpse, the worst was still yet to come. Throughout random segments of the Kassalar system, pushing through the warp storms, large asteroids began to crash across the many planets and moons all throughout, teeming with the most anarchistic Xenos in all the known universe. Orcs and Gretchen arrived to bring about wanton destruction to any and all they could find. For, to an Orc, what could be better than a fight against one group of gits? A fight against, of course, all Umis, Spikies, Puny, Eldar, or whatever else we can see. The struggling human population was now beset by Orcs, Chaos, Tau, Eldari, and the Votann. However, the worst was still yet to come. Poised to strike from the webway, the most indiscriminate raiders of all, the Drakari, appeared without warning, seeming to know the perfect moment to capitalize on the increasingly chaotic situation. Pouncing, then retreating before larger forces had a chance to mobilize. attacking like wolves on a cornered bear. However, ever the opportunists, the Drakari saw a chance to take more than just Imperial citizens. Any and all stragglers would be taken back to Dark Commorragh as slaves. Beyond all these external threats, a terrible internal tumor lay hidden, skulking amongst the populace, spreading its influence, converting and infecting all that they could reach, compromising loyal Imperial soldiers, priests, nobles, and workforces, the ever-pervasive gene-stealer cults, working tirelessly to undermine the Imperium in the name of the four-armed Emperor, preparing for the great day of ascension, which was closer than most would realize, as the worst had finally come. A great shadow fell over the warp. Psykers fell screaming to madness as the vast presence touched their minds. Whole planets convulsed in the throes of panic and desperation, not even quite aware of the true extent of the horror coming towards them. Merely aware that something incomprehensibly vast and terrible was approaching, and it was hungry. Through what little garbled astropathic messages there could be made out, it appeared that 3 distinctly separate splinter fleets of the Tyrannids were approaching, each depleted from previous battles and desperate for biomass to replenish themselves should they meet up, and should they somehow combine, the consequences would be beyond dire. The arrival of the Tyrannids had placed a death timer on the system. Without promise of reinforcements or aid from other worlds of the Imperium, all knew that their defense was hopeless and their fates sealed. However, warp storms themselves are a double-edged sword. Much as they can scatter ships actively seeking a destination, they can also wash vessels into a system that had no intention of going there. In this case, it brought possible salvation in the form of several regiments of Krieg guardsmen and Astartes companies, the Angels of Death themselves. The odds were overwhelming, the situation beyond chaotic, but the Emperor's will would be done, and they threw themselves into the task with a grim determination, rapidly deploying to whatever front needed them most. There was one final element to the Imperial forces that had been present in Kassalar for some time, unbeknownst to the rest of the embattled system. The finest creations of the alchemists of Terra, the Legio Custodes. An entire shield company revealed themselves on a hive world for a purpose that seemed almost pointless. It was a quiet section of the front with no apparent strategic importance. Then, from beneath the blackened sands, a great structure began to emerge, vast beyond the imaginings of the Mechanicum, more ancient than Terra itself. Without hesitation, the shield company surged into the opening gateway, fighting their way down through the waking tomb world to its heart. It was madness, sheer folly, an act of suicide for even the Emperor's chosen guardians to face such a monstrous foe alone. And yet, days later, when they emerged, battered yet whole, all who saw them knew some great act had just played out. And true enough, the metallic hordes that surged from the buried cities beneath did not strike out against the humans squatting on their ancient world, but instead surged into their vessels out against a common foe. For the Tyrannids were a threat the Necrons could not ignore. At least, not yet. The fate of Kassalar now hung in the balance, poised on the knife's edge, every faction vying to claim the worlds for their own ends, be it slaves, resources, or simply food.